Okay, it's 5 minutes after now, and we seem to be holding steady at 36 participants, so we'll go ahead and get started. I hope everyone can see the screen with the society logo and the um, membership meeting text.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Couple reminders. Please mute your audio unless you're speaking. With a group this size, sometimes the background noise can get kind of overwhelming. But questions and comments are welcome throughout the meeting. Anytime you have something to say, just unmute yourself and let us know. We will be pausing in between the parts of the meeting for questions and comments, but you're also welcome to just chime in when you think of it, if you need to. And just to let you know, this meeting is being recorded, and we hope to make it available on the DIS website. So be aware of that. Okay, what is the Dwarf Iris Society? We have many members here. I presume most of you know what we're about, but we also have some guests. So I thought I'd go over this. The Dwarf Iris Society was founded in 1950. So this makes it our 75th year, which is pretty amazing. I think only the Society for Louisiana Irises has a claim for being an older special interest society devoted to a type of irises. And the Society for Louisiana Irises, I think in its early years, also had a sort of strong geographical component as well. So it was a little different. We became a section of the American Iris Society in 1978, which is also a long time ago, but 28 years after we were founded. The primary focus of the Dwarf Iris Society is on the miniature dwarf bearded class. So those are irises under 8 inches tall. But we also have a secondary focus. We do promote reticulatas, arrowbred dwarfs, dwarf beardless irises, dwarf species, and even sometimes STBs. These other types all also have other societies to promote them, but we figure our membership is interested in enough different kinds of irises that we can occasionally talk about some of the other things that could be considered dwarfs as well. What do? We have an annual print publication, the Dwarf Iris Society Portfolio, which comes out in January. The name is kind of a harkening back to the early years of the society when we had an annual publication named the Portfolio, which was full of all sorts of information from different people, strong focus on hybridizing and technical topics, but also plenty of gardening stuff and varietal comments and things like that. And that's what we're trying to make it today. We want it to be more than just the news of the society's business. We want it to be full of informational articles that you will want to keep on your shelf and refer back to. So we want it to be a resource for people who are learning everything they can learn about dwarf irises. We also have a monthly newsletter called Tiny Talk, which Nancy McDonald puts out once a month. And that has a featured iris of the month, a featured companion plant. All right, so Tiny Talk has featured dwarf iris of the month, also has a featured companion plant, gardening tips, seasonal notes, plus whatever is coming up with the society, our plant sale, seed sale. So we also have an annual plant sale, which is in June or July. Our donors are members of the society.
Well, it's muted me, I think.
Collections of plants. And we have an annual seed sale, which begins in October. We have most of those are open pollinated seeds, bee pods from our members' gardens. But some of us do make planned crosses just for the seed sale. I have quite a few every year that are intended to be good crosses for dwarf irises. So if you're interested in growing irises from seeds or have your own hybridizing program, this could be an interesting resource for you We also have a website and an online store. The website has our back publications. You can buy memberships there. The seed sale and plant sale both take place on the website, on the online store. The website has a big photo gallery and also has lots of interesting articles about dwarf irises to read. And this year we have some special merchandise for our 75th anniversary, which you can also get there. We're really trying very hard to make the Dwarf Iris Society a real value. We don't want to be just going through the motions. I think these days that's not a very good idea. There are so many other ways that people can get information besides a membership that we want to make sure the membership counts. If you are a member, thank you very much. Our membership has been increasing steadily for the last 6 years. And if you're not a member, if you're a guest, we invite you to join. The dues are very reasonable, $12 for a year, and a bargain, $29 for 3 years. And that barely covers the cost of getting you the portfolio. This year, we're going to have a very special portfolio for our 75th anniversary, which will be a much larger and more comprehensive issue with lots of different kinds of articles in it. We're preparing for that now. Here's our leadership team. I'm Tom Waters. I'm the president. Nancy McDonald is our vice president. Danita McDonald is our treasurer. And Jennifer Sowell is our secretary. And we have 6 directors. And you can also see that many of us have other jobs in the society besides just being an officer or director, which are listed down below. I'd like to take this time now to have our directors and officers introduce themselves. So let's start with Jeff. Are you here, Jeff?
All righty. I had to unmute myself here.
Good.
So yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. I'm Jeff Bennett. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I work at a public garden and I grow about 3,000 varieties of irises of all types. And I've been growing irises for 35 years. And the garden that I work in is open to the public about the third weekend of April until the third weekend of May each year, and it's free. And I am also the awards and archives person for the Dwarf Iris Society. And that's it.
Great. Thank you. George Hildenbrand.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, thanks for unmuting me. My screen is all messed up right now, so I can't see you, but
Okay.
I can give you a brief synopsis of my iris interests and why I'm in the Dwarf Society. I first started growing dwarfs probably in 1980 when I got my first care package from my father's garden. Uh, he had, I believe, become interested in dwarfs from the Grapes sisters who lived about 100 miles west of us in Nebraska at the time and did quite a bit of hybridizing. This would be 65 years ago or so. And when I got that care package in 1980, I started growing the MDB that I still grow, Buddha Song, which has become a favorite of mine. And I'm most interested in the other dwarf species of iris and also arrowbreds and the combination, the arrow plumes, which Tom has done a lot of work on recently, and I still dabble in. Hopefully, I'll have a few seeds to share on the seed sale. And as I say, arrowbreds are my other interest in iris, but I garden in eastern Pennsylvania now. So that's pretty much a synopsis of what I'm up to.
Thank you, George. Delane, are you on?
I am.
Hi.
Hello, hello. I'm Delane H. Langton, and me and my wife, Jane Tibbs, own and operate Eagle Ridge Iris Gardens, where we have a collection of about 7,000 iris of all classes. We grow almost all of them except for the PCIs. And we're coming off hosting the National American Iris Society Convention, and very nearly irised out for this year, and looking forward to snow in our Montana Zone 4. We love the MDBs. Of course, they start the show early, and it's a very favorite class of ours. And we grow about, at last count, like 132 cultivars or varieties. So love those MDBs.
Great, thank you. Rachel Martell is not able to be with us today. She's on vacation with family in a place where she cannot get an internet signal. Kevin Vaughn, are you here?
I am.
Kevin doesn't have a video connection, but he is here by telephone, so please go ahead.
Yes, I'm Kevin Vaughn. I live in Salem, Oregon. I've gardened in Massachusetts and Mississippi before here, and I've been growing iris for 62 years now. I started when I was 9. My mentors were Polly Bishop and B. Warburton, so I got really excellent training. And as you'll see later, I'm doing a little bit of hybridizing with these guys too. Having lots of fun with them.
Okay, great, thank you. Sean.
Hey, I'm Sean Zera. I'm actually a wildlife biologist by profession, but I'm really more of a plant guy and kind of an amateur botanist. I think I got into irises like in high school. The next door neighbors had iris borers and decided to get rid of their irises and tossed their iris pallida rhizomes into the ditch across the street, where they took root and started blooming. And I was like, huh, that's kind of cool. How do they do that? And then I got involved with the Species Iris Group of North America, Cigna, and I still run the seed exchange for that. And I'm not sure how I think I got involved with Dwarf Iris Society through the Facebook group. I think I was posting species hybrids in there. And I garden in Southeast Michigan. I'm a cold zone 6A, and so I can also grow almost all of the different species. I think at one point I was growing like 75 different wild species of irises. And then I've also kind of gotten interested in hybridizing with some of the odder things that could produce miniature dwarfs, which I will not talk about today, even though it's really cool.
Thank you, Sean. Next, let's introduce our secretary, Jennifer.
Okay, found the button. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm from Southwest Oregon, Cave Junction. I've been growing irises off and on for about 30 years, but I got really re-involved about 2019, 2020. Joined both HIPS and the Dwarf Iris Society to take advantage of the plant sales. And I just happened to join Dwarf Iris Society around the time they were looking for a secretary. I had some free time, and I've done it as a job, part of my job, taking minutes. So it just seemed like a good fit. At the time, I had like 2 actual dwarfs, mostly SDBs, but I've learned a lot and I'm really enjoying it.
Great, thank you. Now our treasurer, Donita. Are you there, Donita? I know she was on earlier, so.
How's that? We there?
Great. There you
Yeah.
go.
Okay, great. I live about an hour northeast of Atlanta, Georgia. So from a different kind of region of the country. And I think that's one of the main things that is important for me to be an advocate for growing these little guys, because a lot of people say, oh, you can't grow those here. You can't do that. And you most certainly can without a lot of super special care. So I'm delighted to do that, and delighted for everybody to be here today. Enjoy growing all different kinds of irises. I sort of started out backwards, I guess, a little bit. I was interested in a national collections program several years ago, and even though that has not come to fruition, it's my hope that it still will at some point in the future. But it afforded the opportunity to explore and expand a lot of learning about irises in lots of different classes. So glad to be here.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Now our Vice President, Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy McDonald. I live and garden with my husband in far northern Michigan, the Upper Peninsula on the south shore of Lake Superior. Like others in far northern climates, I love MDBs because they bloom early and let me know that, by golly, that 6-month winter is over. They do really well here. They can take the cold and they are well covered. We get about 300 inches of snow in the winter and they don't seem to mind that a bit. So I also am the cultivar preservation chair for the DIS. I'm very interested in historic irises. I love history in general, and I love tailored irises. The MDBs in particular have a really interesting history that's a little different than that of the tall beardeds. I'm constantly trying to find ones that are not widely available or not known at all. They're hard to find because, unlike a TB, it doesn't take much to overrun an MDB. So a good sized dandelion can kill an MDB. You don't find a lot of them in old cemeteries. So that's a challenging position. And as Tom said, I also edit Tiny Talk and I welcome ideas and articles. So please do get in touch if you have ideas.
Thank you, Nancy. And I'm Tom Waters. I'm currently the president of the Dwarf Iris Society. This will be my last year as president. Nancy has agreed to take on the job, so there will be an election in January through the portfolio. And hopefully I will be able to hand the reins over to her competent hands. I have a garden in northern New Mexico, about 20 miles north of Santa Fe. And I've been growing irises since I was a teenager in the 1970s. But it's been kind of an on again, off again iris career because there have been several times when I didn't have anywhere to garden. So I would have to drop everything and then start over again later. I'm also very interested in hybridizing. Like George mentioned, I hybridize both the miniature dwarfs and the arrowbred dwarfs. And that was to be my primary work with irises when I came back after I retired. But the Dwarf Iris Society needed some help and we jumped in and here we are. Before I retired, I was a radiation protection manager at Los Alamos National Laboratory. So being Dwarf Iris Society president has certainly kept me busy for the last 6 years. And I thank all the support I've gotten from this wonderful leadership team that we've assembled here. It's a really great group of people and one of the best iris societies that I've ever been involved with and working with. Does anyone have any questions or comments for our board members before we move on to the presentations? All right then. Oh, Anita, go ahead.
I was reading your thing about all your activities. I'm redoing the Reblooming Iris Society website, and we could go to sell. I'm not going to have a store on the site, but I do have a sell page, and I was wondering, can I put your plant sale and your seed sale, a link to it on that site?
Oh, that would be great. Yeah,
Awesome.
we love publicity that anyone gives us.
Okay, awesome. That'd be great.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, today we have a three-part presentation. Sean will be doing the first part, I will be doing the second part, and Kevin will be doing the final part. So Sean is going to talk to us about dwarf species. And I believe, Sean, that I've made it so you can share your screen even without being a host. So
Yes.
go ahead.
Oh,
There we go.
there we go. So, presentation mode. Can everybody see my presentation?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about dwarf species irises, the wild species, in particular those that have given rise to MDB cultivars. One thing that I've done throughout this presentation is all of the photos are used with Creative Commons licensing permission from iNaturalist, which is a website that allows people to take photos of organisms and document where they were found, and it's a collaborative identification thing. And so all of the photos in this presentation are of wild species in their natural habitat. So for example, this is Iris lutescens on a hillside in France. All right, but before I get into the species that are specifically related to MDBs, as Tom had mentioned, we do encourage gardening with all the irises that might be considered dwarf. And so I want to talk a little bit about the some of the other species that at least fall into the 8 inches and under height category. There are somewhere, depending on your taxonomic preference, 250 to 350 species of irises that are native to Europe, Asia, and North America. And among all of the different types, there are a surprising number of dwarf species. Nearly all of the groups have some. Everybody's probably familiar with the reticulatas. I bet everybody in this group is growing them. They are, of course, little tiny alpine bulbous guys from Asia. Very dwarf until they're done flowering, at which point the leaves grow to a foot or more high. Then the other big group of bulbous irises, the Junos, most of those are not dwarfs, but a surprising number of the species are. Nobody's doing a huge amount of hybridizing with those yet, but that'd be a cool opportunity. They're, of course, known for their corn stalk looking leaves. Oddball little beardless guy, Iris ruthenica, kind of off in a group by itself. That is from Central and East Asia, and forms a creeping little mat of flowers. If you can get a hold of that, I highly recommend it as a garden plant. I think it's unjustifiably rarely grown. There's an entire group of small woodland species, the Chinenses from East Asia. This is Iris minuto aurea from Korea. They're small, relatively early blooming mat formers in woodlands, and they have the, unlike a lot of the other species, before I get to the beardeds, these guys do also come in yellow, which is nice, especially for woodlands. Then we've got our pair of Eastern North American native dwarfs, the crested irises. There's the dwarf crested iris that's native to a lot of the Southeast. This is the dwarf lake iris, Iris lacustris, my personal favorite because it's mostly native to Michigan along the Great Lakes shoreline. These guys are mat formers that spread indefinitely to form a carpet of leaves and flowers. One little oddball that I think not a lot of people are growing, also from the eastern U.S., is Iris verna. I'm going to take this opportunity to mention that a lot of these species do not have good common names. People are really, at least in English, people are really boring when it comes to naming dwarf irises. And so this is often just called the dwarf iris. You sometimes see vernal iris, but that's just an adaptation of the scientific name. And how many other irises bloom in the spring. But this guy's kind of neat because it is another woodland species, but it's usually on dry ridge tops and is actually probably more closely related to bearded irises than it is to beardless, even though it does not itself have a beard. Then among the bearded species that we won't be talking about today, several of the groups have dwarf species, the Sam irises like Iris tigridia, Iris arenaria, and then also some arils in the subgenus Onchocyclus are dwarfs, including here's Iris paradoxa, which is definitely one of the neatest little irises. Highly recommend growing that if you can get a hold of it, with its little short stubby falls that are evolved to trick male bumblebees into trying to mate with them. So in any case, onto the species that have given rise to the miniature dwarfs. First and foremost and most important in this is Iris pumila. This guy is native to Central Europe, eastward all the way into Central Asia. And it being such a widespread species, has a lot of color variation. It's real common for these to grow in patches of both purples and yellows. And there's a lot of variation within that. So there's, red purples and blue purples and, violets and pale yellows, the occasional white, a lot of variability in these guys. Part of the reason why they are so variable is that they are tetraploid, just like the tall bearded irises. That means they've got 4 sets of chromosomes instead of the usual 2, and that allows them to mix up their genes more than a diploid species that only has 2 sets. These guys are short. They are dwarf. They usually lack a stem entirely. They're also known for the pumila spot, that dark patch on the falls that you can see there, which they also pass along to hybrids involving them. They are very cold hardy, at least USDA Zone 4, maybe colder depending on how much snowfall you get or whatnot. And this is what leads to that perception that miniatures need to be grown in cold climates, which, as we will be discussed in later presentations, is not necessarily true. And then, of course, these guys are known for being in the background not only of nearly all miniature dwarfs, but also in nearly all SDBs. The classic SDB is exactly half Iris pumila genetically. And that brings us to an interesting crossover with our next species, Iris lutescens. That was the same one that I had on the cover slide. This guy has the same color variation as Iris pumila. Not as widespread. It's primarily a coastal Mediterranean species from Portugal east to Italy. And these guys are particularly interesting because they are also tetraploids, but they are an amphidiploid tetraploid, meaning that half of their chromosomes are of one type and half of them are a different configuration. This is the same chromosome configuration as a typical SDB, and is the same configuration as most modern MDBs derived from SDBs. And so this species presumably evolved by much the same way that SDBs were created artificially. Sometime in the past, there was an Iris pumila or an ancestral species and something related to a tall bearded that happened to hybridize and gave rise to this species. These guys are real variable. They've often been separated into multiple species. The one of which that's most relevant is Iris kami-iris. That usually refers to the dwarfest of forms in the species. These guys can be tall. They can be taller than MDBs, maybe upwards of a foot tall with a prominent stem, or they can essentially be stemless like that. I think I mentioned that they have pretty much the same color range as Iris pumila, which is not surprising considering that they probably have it or one of its ancestors in their background. Though they are less likely to have a dark spot on falls. These guys, of course, are perfectly capable of hybridizing with SDBs because of their origins, and this species was, before the creation of artificial SDBs, this was the dwarf iris of choice. Most dwarf cultivars were selections of this species, perhaps even from the wild. Next species is Iris aphylla. A lot of people are probably familiar with that because it has gotten a lot of traction in hybridizing with some of the other classes because we'll get into that in a second. Wide ranging again, cold hardy, not coastal. In any case, this guy is a tetraploid, but this guy has the chromosome configuration of tetraploid tall bearded irises. It can be easily crossed with them, and there's a lot of interest in doing that because of its branching pattern. This species typically has one long branch from the base of the plant that can be almost as tall as the main stem. And so it has a use in hybridizing for increasing branching and therefore the overall number of buds. It had been used in the past for creating in the creation of tetraploid miniature tall beardeds. And so this has some limited adventures in hybridizing, particularly from Ben Hager, who thought that it was appropriate to use for creating SDB type MDBs that would have the smaller flowers, but rather than large flowers from typical TBs. These guys are really weird. Their weirdest thing besides the branching is that they are aphylla because they lack leaves in the winter. They go 100% dormant. There are no visible leaves on the plant whatsoever, which is unusual, not just among bearded irises, but all irises. Nearly all of them retain some little stubby leaves. All right, the last two, we've got a species pair, Iris reichenbachii, which is native to the Balkan Peninsula. This guy is interesting. Some plants are diploids and some are tetraploids. They have the same chromosome type as either diploid heirloom tall beardeds or as modern tetraploids. This species is not always dwarf. It can be taller than 8 inches. It's got a stem. It most notably has that flat keeled spathe that makes it very distinctive. And this guy is, until recently, hadn't really been used in purposely creating miniature dwarfs. It's most well known for having introduced the dominant amina mutation into TBs via the cultivar progenitor. It made it easier to breed for aminas because it was a dominant rather than a recessive trait, as in earlier irises. And so a lot of dwarfs will have this in them via tall beardeds, not because they were because it was specifically being used for dwarf iris breeding, even though it is a smaller species. However, it has a sister species Iris suaveolens, which apparently I screwed up the map there. Similar range, but suaveolens is significantly shorter. It usually lacks a stem entirely. It is apparently always diploid rather than tetraploid. It does carry the same dominant amina mutation as Iris reichenbachii. And so it has been used in limited capacity for breeding some types of miniature dwarfs. Budasong is the classic example and was mentioned earlier. But it hasn't gotten terribly much traction in modern times because it is only diploid, and so therefore can't be so easily worked into other types of crosses. I will end on the note of I actually really like the species. This is very short, and I've been doing a lot of weird hybridizing with it and got some interesting results, but that is a tale for another time. And I guess maybe if we have like 1 or 2 minutes if anybody's got any questions, otherwise we can move on to the next presentation.
Any questions or comments for Sean? All right.
Hey, Tom,
Yes,
this is Gary White.
yes.
I would like to just mention one thing. Sean mentioned Iris lacustris, the dwarf lake iris.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how many of you are aware, but the American Iris Society Foundation just a couple of months ago gave a significant donation to the Nature Conservancy of Canada to help preserve a property where that iris was growing, and that property was slated for development, and as along the shores of Lake Huron in Canada. And so they're trying to save that property. And so the American Iris Society Foundation is one of the contributors to the Nature Conservancy of Canada to preserve that piece of property. And our interest, of course, was for the dwarf lake iris, Iris lacustris. Kate brought this to the foundation's attention, and so we acted on it.
Great.
Very nice. As I mentioned, it is one of my favorites. Federally threatened in the US and in Canada.
Yeah, it is.
Tom?
Okay, I will go ahead and start my presentation.
Tom, I have a question for
Oh,
Sean.
yes.
You see, my
Go ahead.
name is not Margreet. I'm Hans from the Netherlands. Another dwarf species is Iris schachtii.
Yes.
How do you think that could be helpful in breeding MDBs?
I have never grown it myself. It's definitely been on my radar. I haven't been able to find a source here. My impression of it is that it seems to have some, in particular, some color patterns that are not found in the species that have been used in dwarf breeding so far. I've seen some really interesting colors on those guys, but other than that, my personal take on hybridizing with dwarfs is just we should try all the combinations and just see what comes out of them, right? You never know how some kind of odd genetics might come together to create something totally new if we can get those in there. Schachtii, I'm trying to remember. I think Schachtii is a diploid.
There are different forms, and there's supposed to be a tetraploid form that's the same makeup as the tall beardeds and the Phila and Reichenbachii. And I have grown it for a number of years and tried to use it, but haven't been successful in crossing it with anything that I thought it should be compatible with. So maybe I was just unlucky in the clones that I obtained. But in any case, it has been a dead end for me. Although in principle, it should be an excellent one to to use where you would use Reichenbachii or Aphylla.
As it would theoretically contribute to short leaves too, right? That'd be an advantage. Yeah.
I have a few different forms, but I'm struggling keeping it healthy. It develops a lot of black spot on my plants. So I haven't been able to use it in hybridizing yet.
Yeah, thanks. That was an interesting comment. Another one to be thinking about. Are there any further questions? Okay, I'll go ahead and start sharing now. My presentation is on the 3 types of miniature dwarf bearded irises. Most people are familiar with the idea that there are different types of arrowbreds based on how much arrow content they have in their background. Most people are also familiar with the idea that there are both diploid and tetraploid miniature tall bearded irises from different types of breeding. And similarly, although it's not as often publicized, there are 3 main types of miniature dwarf bearded irises from different types of dwarf breeding. The first are the ones I call type 1. This presentation, I talk about type 1, 2, and 3. Those are my own designations just to make them easier to talk about. I don't think there's an official terminology yet. But a type 1 MDB typically comes from crossing SDBs. SDBs, as Sean mentioned, were originally created by crossing tall beardeds with Iris pumila. So that's their genetic background. And what happens often is if you cross 2 SDBs, a certain fraction of the seedlings, a small percentage, maybe 10%, will turn out to be below the 8-inch height limit for the MDB class. And so they can be registered as MDBs, as miniature dwarfs. And these days, that is the most common type of MDB that's introduced. I would say about 90% of MDBs that have been introduced in the last 20 or 30 years have been from this kind of breeding. And you can kind of understand why. The SDBs are such a popular class, and we have so many hybridizers who have well-established lines of SDBs and are raising thousands of SDB seedlings every year, that just by the numbers, there are going to be dozens or even hundreds of those seedlings that are in the MDB height range and have the wonderful flower forms and colors from those advanced breeding programs. I should point out that you can also use another type 1 MDB when making this cross. So you can have an SDB crossed with a type 1 MDB, or even 2 type 1 MDBs crossed with each other. And you might think that that would make a huge difference in how many MDBs resulted from the cross, but it really isn't so much, except with some exceptions. Mostly, even if you use type 1 MDBs as parents, you get a lot of SDBs among the seedlings. So these have the full color and pattern found in SDBs, which makes them the most varied and the most sort of modern looking, I guess. They're easily grown even in mild winter climates. I think even up to zone 8, you should have no problem. Basically, anywhere that SDBs can be grown, these type 1 MDBs can be grown. And so this harkens back to a comment that Donita made of people saying, oh, MDBs can't grow in warm climates or mild winter climates. And most of them today can, because most of them are really just the same as SDBs in terms of their requirements. So the chromosome configuration, they're half pumila and half TB, because remember that was the original cross for standard dwarf bearded for SDB. And these are exactly SDBs in genetics. The only thing is that they're under 8 inches tall. They are fully fertile amongst themselves and with other types of irises, and they tend to bloom later than the other miniature dwarfs, often in SDB season, as you would expect, with them coming entirely from SDB breeding. Problem is they're often near the maximum height limit, so they can grow out of the class. You'll see a lot of them registered at 7.5 inches or even 7.75 inches, which means that if they're in the climate or certain weather conditions in the spring, they can easily grow up 8, 9, 10 inches tall, which is not really what we want in a miniature dwarf. I'm going to go through the pictures quickly, not to belabor them, just to show you the variety of color and form that we have here. Comment here, plicatas are found only on the type 1 MDBs. They're not found among other types of MDBs. Dollop of cream there, I think, has a sort of ideal ruffling for a miniature dwarf. Fairy firefly there, you see the tangerine beard and the orange color. That's another thing you only find in type 1. Icon there from Keppel, another orange one. Keppel's MDBs are kind of an exception to the rule that most seedlings turn out to be SDB size. Keppel has been working with these orange ones for a number of years, and now he usually gets more than half of his seedlings come out less than 8 inches and are suitable as MDBs. Spot of Tea there was one of Paul Black's first ones, along with Cinnamon Apples back in 1989. At the time, it was kind of a big deal because there weren't that many things in the brown range. And of course, his work has come a long way since then. Just a note about some other things that are also type 1 MDBs. Sean mentioned Iris lutescens. And this was most of the dwarf bearded irises prior to the 1950s, when the modern SDBs were first created. So they're similar to modern type 1 MDBs and small SDBs, but have less of a color range. You can also get type 1 MDBs by crossing a tetraploid miniature tall bearded by Iris pumla, which was Ben Hager's plan. This is the same kind of thing genetically as crossing a TB by Iris pumla, because the tetraploid MTBs are similar to tetraploid TBs. But since they have the Iris aphylla in them and they're smaller, the idea is that you can get smaller miniature dwarf-sized plants more regularly from this kind of cross. And I've recently crossed Iris Reichenbachii with Iris pumla and gotten other type 1s that are very, very small, consistently 5 inches or so. Type 2 are what you get from taking an SDB or a type 1 MDB and crossing it back to the dwarf species Iris pumla. This was the most popular type of miniature dwarf from the 60s and 70s, because at that time, most of the ones just from crossing SDBs were too big and weren't really suitable. And also back then, there were more growers that were deliberately trying to produce miniature dwarfs and wanted crosses that could give a high percentage of small seedlings. So this is what they usually did. In this group, there are no plicatas, pinks, or oranges. They require a little more winter cold than the type 1s. I'm saying here approximately zone 7. Your mileage may vary, but that's kind of a good ballpark. And this is the reason why we have this persistent myth that miniature dwarfs require the colder winters than SDBs. It's because that was true back in the 1960s and 70s, when most of them were of this type rather than the modern type 1. It's no longer true. Chromosome configuration, they're 3/4 pumla and 1/4 TB. That's kind of an unbalanced configuration, so they have limited fertility. They're very difficult to breed with, either crossed between themselves or with others. But they do bloom early, so they're great for that. And most are 5 to 6 inches in height and seldom, if ever, grow out of class. So here's some picture Alpine Lake, one of the most famous and popular of this type. You can really see how these are sort of a midway stopping point between Iris pumila and the SDBs or type 1 MDBs. Some people are still producing them. Here is Small Token from Linda Miller. She's one of the current hybridizers who currently works with all three types instead of just the type 1s, which a lot of them do. Okay, type 3. These are pure pumila. So a typical parentage is crossing one clone of Iris pumila with a different one. They're relatively few in number. A lot of people don't grow Iris pumila. They have a color range, white, yellow, purple, blue. Almost all of these with that contrasting spot that pumila is known for. They do require winter cold, I would say maybe zone 6. They flourish here in my zone 6 garden in northern New Mexico. But people in Albuquerque, which is only like 80 miles south of me, have trouble sometimes blooming them. Chromosome configuration, of course, as I said, pure pumila. They're fully fertile with themselves and anything else. And they bloom very early. They're the earliest of all the bearded irises. So I wouldn't be without them just for that reason alone. They're the first things that come out in the spring. To give you an example of an idea of how early that is, here where I live, the peak tall bearded season is the end of May and beginning of June. And the pumilas start blooming usually about the 3rd week of April. And they're mostly 3 to 5 inches in height and certainly never grow out of class. And here's some example. These are both Linda Millers again. Keystone Oracle, hard to photograph well, but it has a real bright turquoisey area around the beard. The Little Drummer Boy is the most recent one that won the Caparn Welch Medal for best MDB. And you know, some of these can be registered in the species class because if they are pure Iris pumila, they do qualify as a species. They do not have to be registered as MDB. Most hybridizers will register them as species if they're fairly close to a wild collected form. Either they're from seed that was collected in the wild or maybe just 1 or 2 generations removed from that. And finally, here's a table that sort of summarizes it all. I'll give you a few minutes to take that in and I'll welcome any questions. All right, very good. Thank you. Kevin is up next, and I have his slides, so it will take me a minute here to get them up, since Kevin does not have a video connection. Okay, finally. Sorry for the delay, folks.
No problem. One back. Good afternoon, everybody. If you've ever been to my yard, you realize that nothing with pollen is safe, and that includes the MDBs. And so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I'm doing with the MDBs and why. Next slide. So I'm paying a bit of homage here to Ben Hager because what Ben set out to create was a line of fertile miniature dwarfs, and he did that by using tetraploid miniature talls and crossing them with pumila. And so that gave 40 chromosome hybrids that were essentially the same as the SDBs, but were smaller because the TED MDBs have not only an iris of phylla, but they also have some small BBs in the parentage that give a dwarfing effect. And when you cross these Hager MDBs with the fallouts from the SDB lines, you get a full segregation of all the characters, and that allows you to incorporate all the important improvements from SDB breeding into the MDBs. The next slide. So the next slide shows the Vaughan plan. So I set out to cross the Hager line with the best of the SDB fallouts, and then line and crossbreed these further. So the next slide
Wow.
shows the first of these. This is Kung Fu Panda, which is a cross of a Lass and Tiny Beacon. So it has some of the Hager things on both sides of the pedigree. This is about 5 inches tall. The next one is its Fib. Next slide. Yeah. Little Jackpot, which is similar in pattern, but now has pale yellow standards and white fall and falls that have kind of an interesting pattern of blue and then a very clean white edge as well. Next slide. This is an SDB seedling of mine from Black Olive by Chemistry, and that's some straight SDB fallout type of breeding. Very nice plant, though, has a lot of vigor and a very good, very dark color. When I crossed this with Kung Fu Panda, I got the next slide, which is Baa Black Sheep. Interesting on these hybrids that involve both the straight SDB type of MDB breeding and crossing with the Hager stuff is that they bloom a bit earlier than the straight SDB by SDB MDBs, and they also repeat bloom. So Baa Black Sheep blooms with the MDBs, and then shoots up stalks right into TB season. There are not a lot of stalks, but I wouldn't call it a rebloomer. It's sort of a repeat bloomer. It has so many genes, it's a little bit mixed up as to when to bloom, and as a consequence, it blooms for a long period of time, about 6 weeks normally. Next slide. So green is one of those things that we all strive for in irises because we don't have any greens. And the pumulas have a unique pigment that makes yellow in the pumulas. It's a flavone. And flavones are water-soluble pigments, unlike the carotenoids that make the yellows and the TBs. And they can actually mix with anthocyanins, blue anthocyanins or purple anthocyanins, to give a fairly green color. And this is one I named Holy Guacamole because it's really kind of guacamole colored. It also has a bit of a yellow rim around the petals. It's a fun little flower, and I hope to see a bunch of seedlings from this coming spring. But I think it could be really fascinating just to see how far I can get the green to come down the falls. Next slide. So I normally would never do this cross. Twinkle Little Star is a white with a blue spot, and Ribbit is a kind of a greenish yellow. But they happen to be blooming next to each other, and they both had pollen. So I couldn't resist myself, and I made over 100 seedlings from this cross and the reciprocal. And I've also taken those F1 seedlings and bred them with each other sort of randomly. And I got all kinds of colors and patterns in that next group of seedlings. However, I want to show you today 2 of the first generation seedlings that are selected for introduction. The next slide shows, this is one here where it's sort of the kind of the nicest combination of those 2. It has the little bit of the yellow and the standards from Ribbit, and it has that beautiful fall spot from the Twinkle Little Star. And it also has that lovely ruffling from Ribbit. I know, Nancy, you're going to be upset with me for putting ruffling on MDBs, but here it is. The next slide shows one I just registered as Little Gray Pet. it was the only purple one in the whole group. And it also shows that same kind of repeat blooming throughout the season. It starts with the MDBs and it blooms. This was actually blooming right after the TBs had finished. So people that came to my yard to see late medians and TBs saw this little iris blooming too. I named it after, there's a very famous daylily called Little Gray Pet that was one of my favorites as a kid. This is sort of those colors of Little Gray Pet, although of course it didn't have a beard like this one. Next slide. So Tom and Sean, I both told you about the chromosomal constitution of these guys, and what they're called is amphidiploids, when they have two sets of chromosomes from one species and two sets from another. And so most of the SDBs and most of the MDBs are this kind of amphidiploid, two sets of TB chromosomes and two sets of pumila chromosomes. And I was taught as a kid that they pretty much paired with themselves. The TB chromosomes paired with themselves, and the two sets of pumila chromosomes paired with themselves, and never the twain shall meet. However, that's not exactly true. There are 4 chromosomes in the TBs and 4 chromosomes in pumila that are homologous enough to pair. So this should actually, in certain times, there should be instances where pumila and TB chromosomes share and cross over genetic information. So you might get some TB chromosomes with pumila, and you might get some pumila with TB. So I raised a fairly large crop from 2 SDBs, Searing Embers and Debonair Bear. They both look like typical SDBs. However, they segregated out 2 kinds of seedlings. One were very tall SDBs, about 16 inches tall, with lots of buds, and then 4 to 5 inch MDBs. Next slide. And this shows one of the tall ones here. This is, I just named this plant Atticus for one of my friend's Siamese cats who passed away. It sort of had Siamese cat colors to me. Anyway, this is one of the tall ones in the cross. It's a tall SDB with 4 to 5 buds. It also blooms, second set of blooms, almost into TB season. So it may have picked up one of those pumila chromosomes that had a little bit of TB influence. In contrast, let's look at the next slide. There's 4 of these now that are just tiny MDBs, 4 to 5 inches tall. These are all out of the same seed pod. They have very nice shape, like an SDB, but are very dwarf. If I should have put my thumb next to this while taking this picture, so you could see that the falls are not much bigger. The spot on the falls is not much bigger than my thumb. So these are really tiny little guys. Next slide. There was another one, very interesting segregations in this cross too. The bright orange beard on this kind of an odd beige and plum MDB, very tiny. And the last one, next slide, kind of a soft pastel amina. This is the tiniest one, about 4 inches tall. These generally have 2 buds, not 1. So it's the pumila influence. These, I think, actually have a TB chromosome with a bit of pumila genes associated with it. Years ago, when I was in B. Warburton's garden, I think it was 1968 or 1969, he bloomed a cross very similar to this. And she was actually mad that she got all the MDBs because she wanted SDBs. And I thought, oh, how can you be mad? Because these are just the cutest little things ever. And she threw them all out. What an awful setback for MDBs. But anyway, these should all eventually get out on the market here. I think it'll be a nice group to work with. They all seem to be very fertile. I was a little worried that if they were doing some weird chromosomal things, they might not be as fertile, but they all seem to be quite fertile too. So I think one more slide. Maybe not.
Excuse me.
Oh, here we are. So there is I think the future of these is by using these Hager MDBs from the TET MTB by Pumila crosses with the Shore SDB crosses. I think we can really get some MDBs with improved form and exciting colors. And certainly, I'm just in the early stages of this, but I'm really excited about what's happening. Because of their fertility, we can continue to breed these. That was one of the frustrations of the old SDB by Pumila crosses, because they were, let's say, hard to cross with is an understatement. In fact, I tried a couple of years ago to make crosses with these, and I was 0 for 41. So I decided, okay, yeah, this is telling you something, Kevin. You don't need to do this anymore. And also, I'm seeing some evidence now that there may be some crossing over of TB and Pumila chromosomes. And so we're getting now some TB chromosomes in these hybrids that have extra Pumila genes and vice versa. And I think these TBs with extra Pumila genes are going to be especially useful in producing the MDBs of the future. Thank you so much.
Any questions for Kevin?
Yeah, I have a question. Kevin, it's obviously you like to grow green irises in the MDBs. Do you have snow tree in your collection?
No.
Because I think it's one of the best greens available.
I don't know if that's available in the U.S., so I don't know I don't know that plant at all.
Okay. Well, luckily it is available in Europe. And I had quite a few seeds from it this year. So hopefully I can cross it with Ribbit next year.
I think it's a
Yeah, Ribbit is
Sobek,
an
so it
outstanding
should be
parent.
around. I was supposedly given it once, but it didn't bloom true. But Bob Sobek might still have it.
I know Bob, so I may get in contact with him then.
It is really a nice SDB with great green color.
I have bred with the SDB guacamole, and it's one of the
I've read.
It's an overlay of a little bit of violet over yellow, rather than flavone mixing with anthocyanin in the vacuole. So the carotenoids are in a different cell layer than the anthocyanins. The anthocyanins are on the surface. The carotenoids are below. So you get the green effect by that little bit of violet overlaying the yellow. Whereas in the MDBs and SDBs with the very green spots, it's flavone plus anthocyanin in the vacuole. So the blue and the yellow is making green, just like paint. But it doesn't work that way in the others.
Well, snow tree is great green veining on a white background.
Yeah, I saw it years ago. I think Bob had it as a ceiling one time when I was in Massachusetts. So I may have seen it as a ceiling many, many years ago. I should say, too, that I just sent all these ones that I put names on to Hugh Stout, and they arrived in Oklahoma on Friday, and so eventually they'll be on the market.
Good news.
Who did you send them to?
Hugh Stout in Oklahoma.
You Stout? I can't make out what you're saying.
Hugh Stout.
Stout Gardens at Dancing Tree is the name of his business.
Thank you. And then I typed in a question because I couldn't find my unmute. What was that tricolor iris? Yellow, purple and blue that followed Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and then Baba Black Sheep. And then you showed sort
There's
of,
one of those is not named yet. The one with the yellow standards and white falls with a blue spot is not yet named.
okay, I'm thinking one of this bright yellow border. I don't know the technical term, so I'm sorry.
This Little Jackpot was right after Kung Fu Panda.
What about right after Baba Black Sheep?
Holy Guacamole.
Okay, there was no green in it, it was just yellow on the board. And then you showed an all yellow. Yeah, there it is. Looks like the second one on the left. Yeah, that one.
That's Little Jackpot.
Oh, no, okay, now replace the white with yellow. So it was later on.
Yeah, that is not named yet.
Gotcha.
The yellow at the end.
That was stunning. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, thank you all. I'm so glad that so many people could come to this meeting. It was nice to meet everybody and to get together and support the Dwarf Iris Society a little bit. This is the first time we've done a membership meeting via Zoom. It seemed to work very well, so maybe we'll be able to do more of them in the future. I think an annual membership meeting this way would be a very nice extra to add to what we already do. Any final comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
For those of us that didn't take as good a notes as we would have liked, when will this be available to review, please?
I'll probably be working on the recording in a few days, maybe by the end of the week I'll be able to have it on the website.
Do we just find it or will you send out an announcement?
I can do that.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Good idea.
Tom, this is Danita. While I have everybody, I hope everybody send me your inventories, please, so we can update our database. We'd love to have it and get things a little more current.
Yes, thanks. Anything else?
I see Anita's got her hand raised.
Oh, sorry.
Tom, I like the way the Dwarf Society does their sale. We don't have a salesperson yet, but when we get one, do you think it would be okay if they contacted you and Rachel about how you do your sale?
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to.
Awesome.
Love to share.
Who? I'm sorry, who? Talk to Sharon?
I'm not seeing anyone else. I said no, I said we love to share.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Any final comments?
This is
I'd
nice.
just like to say how wonderful the DIS portfolio is. It's certainly the finest publication we have in irises right now. I mean, if all the publications could aspire to such a high level, I think we'd all be much happier. Anyway, kudos to Tom.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.